This older man has lived in a corner basement unit in my girlfriend's apartment unit for many years now. I noticed too when we walked down the basement hall to go do laundry that I could always hear loud music coming from his apartment. It was loud, but not loud enough that you'd hear it in your own unit or anything. He also always had sheets over his windows, even on the nicest, sunniest days. We would always make jokes that he plays loud music 24/7 because he probably has a hostage in there. Fast forward up until last week, we get back from getting groceries and notice cop cars outside the apartment, a dead body being brought out, and him outside. A good friend lives in the unit across from him and could hear everything going on, what the cops were saying, so she filled us in on all the info that she could get. And it turns out that he had called about his girlfriend dying of COVID. They came to get the body and asked questions, and he supposedly moved the body from the bedroom to the living room and kept changing the time that she had died. He said this morning and also last night, but the cops said that it looked like the body had been there for at least a few days. We speculate that he called when it started to smell and used COVID as an excuse so that they would stay out of the apartment as much as they could. He also apparently lied about her name multiple times and they couldn't find any ID on her. She was so severely malnourished as well and had bed sores in her body so bad that the cops said that she probably couldn't have even walked. The cop who was on the scene saw a lot of unmarked pill bottles and decided to look around when he found a 13-year-old girl hiding in the bedroom who was completely mute, malnourished, and was missing chunks of her own hair. He never mentioned the little girl either, even went as far to tell them that no one else was in the house. But let me make it known too that this is a small one-bedroom apartment. He never even told the landlord that he had 2 people living with him. In fact, my girlfriend also has never even seen or heard these people. The cop also said that there was no type of ID or birth certificate for the little girl, and the apartment was completely riddled with black mold and no edible food anywhere. They also found several guns. This man turned out to be in his early 60s, and the woman who died was 30. It also turns out that he never got arrested for who knows why. I'm sure that they're building a case against him. The girl got taken away. We called the landlord the next day to see if she knew what was going on, and she said that she was evicting him and he would be gone in a few weeks. Over this period, the music has stopped and we've seen him taking out some sort of a large cage to the dumpster. He also told the landlord that the woman died of natural causes and COVID wasn't involved in the end. We talked to a woman who lived in the unit above him, and she said that she actually called the police multiple times on him because for several months she kept hearing a muffled someone screaming help, which means that the cops clearly had done nothing. But he must have known that she had said something because after she had called, he had left literal crap in front of her apartment door, and also would scream at her and call her all sorts of nasty words if he ever saw her. It is all speculation as to what actually happened in that apartment, but it is very clear that there's some foul play there for sure. We have even guessed that he didn't actually live there full time and would just hold them there and come there whenever he wanted to get off and abuse them in some way or something. I've seen the man once in passing, but I've never really spoken to him. We don't really know what's going on, but I'll keep you guys posted if there's any updates. This was over a year ago, so I'm safe now, but this at the time was pretty creepy. So, I'd broken up with my now ex back in January of 2019, and it was my doing. I was angry at everything and had joined Tinder, talked to a guy that seemed pretty cool and was quite attractive. I talked to him quite a bit, took a lift down to where he lived. Now, his dad had passed away not too long ago, so he moved back in with his mum to help out. I found that pretty sweet, and so I didn't think anything of it. We took a lift to Walmart and to the liquor store as his mum had requested some wine. I had bought a pizza to bake at their home to make a decent impression, and had purchased her wine, which she gave me cash for despite my protests, again trying to make a good impression. This home, too, was absolutely gorgeous. They had like an old-timey sort of jukebox thing, and the sink taps in the bathroom were installed in the mirrors. what I mean is that the water flowed from a spout in the mirrors. His mum, too, was as sweet as a southern tea, and she also seemed to like me, which was great. So, this guy had been messaging his lesbian best friend, C, and explained that he had helped her out after she broke her ankle and such. Again, I thought, what a nice guy. We drank, we did the naughty, and everything was cool. I had told him that I had borderline before we met up, and I even warned him that I had some scars from previous incidences, but nothing recent. And he said that he was fine with it and understood. The next morning I had an interview at a major company call center, and his mum actually offered to drive me. Really nice lady too, and I did a great job in the interview and was actually offered the job in the end, and I immediately texted this guy to tell him the good news. So one day when I was home and I had slept for about 8 hours, I wake up to a dozen text messages and over 20 Facebook messages from him. It ranged from, hey, how's it going, to this is hard to say, and I saw how the messages progressed as quickly as I scrolled through them and saw that one that said something like, those cut marks? Yeah, I wouldn't have dated someone doing this anyway. Most of them are just so pathetic that you need to get some serious help. But might as well keep doing that since it seems to be your only friend, and just stuff like that. And I mean, what the heck, right? I blocked him immediately though, and then I posted it to my Facebook page so that if anyone knew him they could know what he was actually up to. And it just so happened that I got a friend request from his lesbian best friend, C. She filled me in that she was not a lesbian. She had actually broken up with this guy hours before befriending me. In other words, they were still dating when he had me over, and he told her that I was a lesbian. She also told me that he goes by his middle name. Now, I had done a basic search with the name that he provided, and on his Facebook page, to make sure that he wasn't a felon or something like that before meeting him. Well, when I did the search with his real first name, sure as the sun comes up in the morning, so many charges were on this thing, including child pornography. He had been actually stalking her, pinging her phone location, and messaging her stuff like, oh what, you're gonna leave your house now? And he also messaged her just some really nasty things. She had actually gotten the cops involved at this stage. She had sent me screenshots of the messages that he was sending. We talked a bit more, and while I'm not a medical professional, it was kind of clear that something was definitely wrong. I mean, he was lying, manipulative, aggressive, angry, and obviously his moods would flip faster than mine. I offered to send her what I could of the messages that I had in case she could use them to build a case against him or something. But shortly after this, I get a friend request from a name that I don't recognize, something generic like Mike or something. Then I get a message, hey, it's Jay, how's it going? How was your job at insert big company name that I'd been hired at that his mum drove me to the interview of? And man, I was freaked out, because that meant that he knew where I worked. Now, the building was secure, but the parking lot, not so much. I got some pepper spray and I called my dad, who has been in the police force and such since before I was even alive, and he advised to not carry a baseball bat because if it was wrestled from me that it could be used against me, but pepper spray was a decent choice. He also said that while online bullying isn't really something the police can do much about, if he messages me again though, that it goes into the harassment area and it needed to be reported ASAP. I was getting off work after midnight and I was really scared, but I parked as close to the building as possible, pepper spray in hand. Fortunately, I haven't run into him since, and I definitely do not want to meet up with him again. I've also moved since and changed jobs not long after this incident too, and I think that for now, I'm actually safe. So for some background, I live in the UK and go to a school with a uniform. I go to quite a large all-girls school with about 8 classes of 30 per year, with 5 years and a 6th form attached, so I've heard about creeps lingering outside of the school before, but they're usually sorted out quite quickly by school staff. At the time, I was in year 9, so just 13 and about 4'9". I had a big homework assignment due, and because I didn't have a computer at home, I stayed late at school to do it at the ICT suite. As it was the beginning of the school year, it was relatively dark at 5 p.m, which is when I got out of school and this event took place. So the bus stop outside my school was a fairly busy place, but there were a couple of other people and me. I had my back up against a fence, and I noticed a man under the bus stop, facing away from but next to the road and opposite the fence that I was leaning on. I was aware of my surroundings, as I had previous experiences with old creeps here, and I'm just generally a bit of a paranoid person as it is. The man didn't strike me as particularly interesting, but I did notice him glare over at me from the corner of my eye. I then saw a bus and assumed it was mine, so I stepped forward to check. It wasn't my bus, which was annoying as I was cold and didn't have a coat at the time. But as I went to step back up against the fence, I almost stood back into the man that was under the bus stop originally, because he had moved to directly behind me, and he had his arm against the pole next to the bus stop now, the one that tells you when the buses come to the bus stop and whatnot. I felt a bit cornered, to be honest, but couldn't really move as the other side of me had all the people waiting to get on this bus that was coming. It felt like forever too, as I could feel this man's breath on the top of my head as I watched the bus come and go and collect all the other people at the bus stop, but it was probably only a minute and a half, I would guess. Once the last person got on that bus, I quickly moved out of this man's area and back up against the fence. He moved so that he was back under the bus stop, sitting across from me, just staring at the ground. At last, though, my bus finally came after about 3 minutes like that. I didn't want to give away the fact that I was getting on this bus, but I had to wave it down, so I stood next to the road to signal it over. As I did, though, my heart really got racing when I noticed that the man was back behind me. I had already got my bus card out and scanned it very quickly, and only saw a few people downstairs. Normally there might be a few people upstairs, so that's where I headed. And that was a wise decision, or mistake. I don't know, to be honest, but I got up there and it was completely empty. Great, I thought. Well, I couldn't really go back down at this point because I knew the man had already gotten on and would be coming up the stairs, so I did the next best thing. I sat in the outside seat directly in front of the bus's camera, which I kept looking at directly, just in case something happened. The man came up the stairs as expected, and he sat at the right back of the bus, but not before looking and smiling at me as he passed. It was then, though, that I had the idea that maybe just saved me. So I live in a quiet street, and it was already dark now, so there was no way that I was getting off this bus, at my stop with this man at least. I pulled out my phone and my earbuds. I put one bud in my ear and texted my best friend to play along when I FaceTimed her and informed her of the situation. She understood, and along with some small talk, I talked sort of loudly, about how my mum was so mad that I had stayed late at school and that she had texted me saying that she was waiting at the door for me, and I had told her that I was only 10 minutes away. In reality, I told my mum that I was staying late in the morning before I left for school, and now my mum was at work, 45 minutes away, and so was my dad, about an hour and a half away, with limited access to either of their phones. I was at my stop to get off now, and I took a deep breath as I stood up. I looked back at the man, and he was looking at me as I walked down the stairs. My friend was screen recording at this point, just in case something went down. Thankfully, he didn't actually follow me down, but as I was walking away from the bus, I looked back to see him against the back window, hands and fists just sort of staring at me and shaking them. That's when I took my flimsy school shoes off, and I sprinted to my house, as the next bus stop was still in eyesight. There were 2 on the main road that led down to my street. Once I was down my street and far enough away that you couldn't see the top of it anymore, I told my friend about him up against the window. She understood, and I put my shoes back on and sped walked the rest of the way to my house. Thankfully, he didn't get off at the next stop and try and follow me or anything, but my family, they still don't know about this. Even though I was quite proud of myself on how I handled the situation and how I had run with no shoes on, a heavy skirt, and a big rucksack on my back like that. And I don't really know if they ever will know, because as much as I don't want to ever stay late at school ever again, I know I probably will have to again at some point, and I don't want my parents to feel guilty about not being able to help if something more serious was to happen while they were at work. But yeah, in the end, everything worked out okay, but it was definitely an unnerving experience. I don't know why he was exactly following me like that, or why he had those closed fists at the end, and staring at me like that. But I can't help but feel like I dodged something that day. Something terrifying.